This is Free Speech TV joining you from Netroots Nation 2025 in New Orleans. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, and I'm bringing you conversations with activists and change makers attending the largest progressive political conference in the nation. With me now is Everett Kelley, National President of the American Federation of Government Employees, representing 820,000 federal employees and others who work for the government. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So federal government workers are under attack since the Trump administration took power, and we knew this. This was something that was openly talked about. Would you say that the main reason, just to kind of frame our conversation, the main reason why government employees are under attack is because the folks in power right now see government services, publicly funded government services, as antithetical to their agenda? They want to dismantle government.
Absolutely. I think that for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think that they definitely want to dismantle the government, privatize the agencies, and that way they can pay back billionaire buddies and that type of thing. Secondly, I think that it is also a form of retaliation against the federal workers and their union for standing up against their antics and standing up against their initiative and calling them out and saying that they should be accountable.
Let's talk about what has just been announced for the Department of Veterans Affairs and federal employees that work there. Basically, the government decided that it would no longer recognize the union contract except for law enforcement agents.
Yes.
Which is an interesting carve-out.
Yeah, very interesting, which is case in point for me, because it was AFGE and the workers of the Veterans Administration that stood up against the closures of facilities across the nation. It was AFGE that fought against the 83,000 RIFs or layoffs or firing, if you will, so much so that they became embarrassed. So therefore, I think this again is an act of retaliation against the worker and against this federation for standing against those initiatives.
And in this particular case, it's also an attack against veterans, right?
Absolutely.
Who they claim to support.
Absolutely. And it's almost funny, but it's hurtful when the secretary says that we are doing this to make sure that the veterans receive the care that they deserve, or that because the union is standing in the way of us providing services for the veteran. Now, think about this. Now, it wasn't the union that said that we're going to cut 83,000 jobs. No, it was not the union. That would have hurt veterans. But it was the union that stood up and said this is not right. It was the union that stood up and held them accountable. It was the union that says that we're going to close down facilities across this nation. It was not the union. It was not the worker. But it was this administration that said that. And we stood up against it, and now comes retaliation.
There's also in recent weeks the firing of the economist at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McIntyre, who was just doing her job and happened to, in the course of her work, point out how many jobs hadn't been created and had very legitimate reasons for revising down the numbers. And of course, Trump fired her, or ordered her to be fired. It's also government employees who are unionized and, in general, government employees doing their jobs. It seems as though the Trump administration has a problem with that, especially because the reliance that the public has on these numbers, on the statistics, also helps hold the Trump administration accountable, right? Government employees, in many ways, hold who's in power accountable. Not directly, but at least through facts and figures.
Right, absolutely. We are apolitical workers. We do not get involved into the politics, but we take an oath, right? And the employees that I represent are very patriotic, and they want to do their job, but they want to do their job, the way that they're supposed to, and not based on what a person wants to hear. And I think that we see massive amounts of, and we will see more of firing of employees simply because they're speaking the truth and they're not saying exactly what a person wants to hear. That's the trend that we see that we're moving in. It's authoritarianism in its finest. and we have to stand up against it. FGE will be standing against these type of actions.
Is the government also, in addition to wanting to dismantle government, this particular administration, also creating actions that go against unions because they're ideologically opposed to the idea of collective bargaining?
Exactly. Again, because it is the union that hold the administration accountable. And they stand in the way many times, and they want them gone. They want to be able to privatize and no one know anything about it. They want to privatize agencies such as the Veterans Administration, which is going to hurt the veteran. They want to do this so that it become an issue of profit and not an issue of service. The American people are used to these services. They deserve these services, and we're going to fight to make sure that these services are maintained. When you start talking about firing veteran workers, you're talking about hurting the veteran. When you start talking about firing Social Security beneficiary claims examiners, you're talking about hurting the most vulnerable in our community, and that's our elders that are seeking benefits. When you start talking about firing scientists at the EPA, that hurts Americans, because who's going to make sure that we have clean air, right? When you start talking about cutting back on the USDA and those type of things, who's going to make sure that the food we eat is good food? Yeah. These are services that the American people deserve.
American people, the majority, support unions, they support veterans, and so all of these actions that this administration is taking that go against what large majorities of the public want, it's still kind of remarkable how well this administration sells their message to the public. And I'm wondering if you can comment on narrative and who controls it in the case of government employees who are unionized, and how you push back against the false narratives that the Trump administration pulls and very effectively manages to convince its significant base. They're still in the minority, but they're a significant minority.
Absolutely. You have to admit that the guy has a way of controlling the narrative.
Like a cult leader does.
Absolutely. I've gone into certain offices, and it's been amazing to me the way they, I'm going to say, worship this individual. It has created a problem for this country. When you think in terms of controlling narrative, that's the reason why he wants to do away with public broadcasting. He don't want the rural, because this is where a lot of his base is, in the rural counties and in rural areas, and he want to completely dismantle the opportunity for any negative comments about the administration going forward to the country. And therefore, it's incumbent upon myself and leaders like me to make sure that everybody hears the truth. We have to reimagine the way we've done things, and we're doing that. We're working with coalition partners to make sure that we make sure that we can get the message out, make sure that the message is clear and concise, and that's what our objective is.
Well, finally, do you hope that in a future administration, we can rebuild some of what has been lost? We can, refund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We can rehire the fired government employees. Can this damage be undone? And that, of course, depends on grabbing political power, which, it's a long-term vision, right?
It absolutely is. Now, do I think that it can be redone? I think so. It's going to take some time, but it's also going to take willpower. We got to be willing to do it. But it starts in 2026. Okay, we have to really begin to build a ground game now. We cannot wait until 2026. We have to do that now, and we gotta really begin to position ourselves, to bring in people in congressional districts that are really working for the American people and not on and for an individual. And when we do that, we're going to be able to bring back the services that America needs. These are services that Americans depend on. So do I think that we're going to get it back? As soon as we get a house that has the wherewithal to stand up against evil, I think we will get it back.
And how do we do that?
We do that by making sure that we elect the right people to go to Congress, and fight for America.
Thank you so much, Everett Kelley. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My guest has been Everett Kelley, National President of American Federation of Government Employees, which represents 820,000 government employees. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, broadcasting from Netroots Nation 2025 in New Orleans for Free Speech TV.